I think it's easier. Everybody's looking over nothing, but everybody's on it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to email that to me? Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Brandon, Dan told me about the sweater. My mom was there. Yeah, I didn't. I've got one. I didn't know I was supposed to. No.
Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. We appreciate your attendance. We'd like to begin our city council meeting, South Weber City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October the 25th, 2022, and it is 6 p.m. So we'll begin with the pledge by Councilman Dills and then a prayer by Councilwoman Petty.
Please stand on these pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the opportunity we have to gather together as members of the community and residents, that we can discuss all the important issues facing our city. We're so grateful for the opportunity we have to be together, and we ask a blessing upon all of our fire, our military and police officers, that they will be safe as they continue to protect us. And we're so grateful for all that we have. We love thee, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we'll begin with public comments. If you've got a comment, we ask you to step up to the microphone and state your name and address. And the council will not respond. So.
Paul Sturm, South Weber. My public comment tonight has to do with action item 6, which is the resolution for adding a special event fees for consolidated fee schedule. In the handout that I gave you, you have a copy of what was proposed, and my public comment on it is that I believe the numerical values in special event permit fee schedule 2 below should be changed from 250 to 299. So other numerical values shown in the special event permit fee schedules number 3 and number 5 would match up with each other. This should eliminate any confusion where the attendance number is between 251 and 300 and what fees should apply. This would also necessitate change on packet page 12 of 23 within resolution 22-45. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mert Taylor, South Weber City. First of all, I just want to thank each and every one of you for the great job you're doing to maintain our city. It seems like when young people get married, they don't want to leave the city because it's such a great place to live. There are some of those here that say they don't want anybody else living in this city. Well, I've been here for 30 years, and I hope more people come because this is such a great place to live. And it's because of the work that all of you individually and collectively do. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Many people have told me that, talking about the council and what's going on here. Second thing is, I sat down at 435 at South Weber Drive a month ago. Between 4:15 and 5:30, and counted the cars that went through there. You won't believe the amount of traffic that comes down through there. And they all either turn and go up to the freeway or to Riverdale. They don't live here. So yes, we need the road. I'd like to see that happen. Third thing is our compliance officer, our code enforcement officer, Chris Tremaya, does a great job. In fact, he's so good at it. I had a vehicle parked for sale. He come and very, what would I say, graciously asked me to move it because I was in violation. But he does a super job, and I'm glad with all the staff we have. Our public works people are great. And I just don't think that people appreciate enough what each of you do in this city. They just come, they take it for granted, and I just love y'all. I want to thank you. I wish there's a bigger word than thanks for what you do for us. So thank you. My 3 minutes are up.
Thanks,
Aw,
Murph.
thanks, Murph.
Thanks, Murph. Appreciate you.
Okay, our next item, presentation that we've asked Kenny Connors to come and do. I met him about a month ago, and he made a pitch to me about coming around to city councils. And he's done it in other cities, and told me a little about the real estate market overview that he does. And so we felt like that would be a good item to put on our agenda. And so we asked Dave if he would reach out, and he did, and we've got him here tonight. So we'll turn some time over to Kenny.
Thank you. I am a South Weaver resident, proud to be a South Weaver resident. In front of you, I have put the presentation that I have given and stuff. I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm not going to try to tell you what you need to do or anything else, because that's not what I'm here for. I want you to see the stats, and I want you to know that this started with Governor Cox asking the Utah Association of Realtors to have a realtor go to each city council meeting across the state. The Utah Association of Realtors reached out to every association. Out of our association here at the Northern Wasatch Front, they said, Kenny, you live in South Weaver, but you do South Weaver, so I am your South Weaver realtor, and the one that is proudly to give you this stat. What I want you to do is we're going to go through this quickly, and then if there's any questions, and if there's time, I'll answer them. If not, I'll stay after and answer them for you. But wanted to give you an overview on the very first page of the state of Utah, where we were last year compared to this year. And if you look at last year, just real quickly, we only had 4,088 houses on the market across the state of Utah. I did bring in these numbers yesterday because I needed to get the thing over to Lisa so she could have them for today's presentation for everybody. 10,299 this year. Big difference and everybody knows where is watching our government and where it's going and stuff, so you can see it. You can see the backups, the under contracts, and the withdrawals. Withdrawals are people who have actually put their house up on the market, and then it wasn't selling because our market is now changing. And you can see, and they've just taken it off. The second page is Davis County. And if you look at Davis County, you'll see it was 279 a year ago. We're at 912 now in Davis County. We are watching a big, that's a 226% difference right now. Again, we're starting to see what's happening. And then I did want to bring it down to South Weaver. Last year, we only had 5 houses on the market at this time. Right now, we got 21, and they're taking longer. If you look at it and ask why, well, you see the interest rates going up, and the federal chairman said 2 more rise of interest rates by the end of the year. He said November 1st and December the 13th, they will be announcing them. That's when they meet. If it goes up like it is, we're going to be, right now, we're looking anywhere between 7 and 7.25 as of today. So you're going to probably be looking close to 8, my guess is, or maybe even a little bit higher by the end of the year.
So what are you saying about this then?
You're going to see houses in South Weaver are now staying on the market a lot longer. They're not selling as fast. And evidence of that is a year ago they were popping. You blink your eye and the house was put on the market and sold.
Yeah, because last year it shows
5.
5 active, but 17 under contract.
Right.
Now we only have 8 under contract. So yeah, that's a huge difference on one is selling. Okay.
Absolutely, council member. And you see in front of you, and a lot of people don't get to see these actual numbers, and that's why I'm here, so you can actually see them. If you look at the next page, and this is the page that we're gonna talk about the most, okay, this is South Weaver. You look at the price range of the houses that we have on the market. We have 21 houses. But I want you to look at what's affordable, and if you look at 300 to 400,000, we only have one house in South Weaver that's that. So my question is, where are our kids going to move to? We don't have a lot of land out here, but this just isn't a South Weaver problem. This is a problem across northern Utah right now. We got one house. And is that affordable? And these people, now I'm gonna give you a good example. I know of a young lady that's an attorney, makes $80,000 a year, has a 780 credit score. Has only debt to her name is her car payment. She can't afford 300,000 when they go to a pre-qualifier. So where are our kids moving to if they're not making, if they're making, 80,000 is a good salary. You ask me who this lady is, I'll tell you, it's my daughter. And she works for the Salt Lake Public Defender's Office. Okay, she's living in my basement. 1 out of every 4 homes they're saying in the Wasatch Front right now have kids living in it with their parents, usually in their basement. On my street alone, and I live at the corner of 1900 and 7840, I know I can go both ways and I can count 7 houses because I did it today. That's my ward. And I was amazed. Yes, we were running out of room, northern Utah, but where are our kids going to stay if they love South Weaver? I enjoyed the gentleman's remarks back here. I love South Weaver. I'm sorry, I'm gonna die in South Weaver. I've known Councilwoman Alberts for a long time, and she'll tell you, when I first met her, she was here and she said, you need to come over here. She wasn't kidding. But if you look at the rest of the housing market, you're looking, okay, where are we at? If you look at what's under contract and you can see a medium number and what's backup, we are actually having a problem. If you take a $400,000 home and you just do a 5% down right now, and then you add in the PMI and everything else that goes with it, their monthly payment is $2,900. My house right now, I'm not paying $2,900 on, and probably most of you aren't. But that is what a payment will be right now on a $400,000 house. So we have to stop and think, what are we doing? What are we going to do? How are we going to build? That's your decision. I'm not going to tell you what to do and stuff, but if you ask me, I have my own opinion. Well, one of the council people, actually, the mayor said, bring us an example of what something we can do. So I searched, and I went to the League of Cities. I went to a couple other places, and that's what you'll see on the next few pages. On the next few pages, you'll see just an example. I just brought one example. What a lot of cities are doing nowadays, and I'm not going to say this will work for this city, but it's something for everybody to think about, is they're building single family homes now at a smaller square footage, around 2,500 with no lot lines. They're making them communities, and that's what you're seeing here. Is I took a couple of pages and I kind of just swiped them, and just to show you what they're doing and stuff, and they're making them nice communities, as you can see through the next 3 pages and stuff. Of course, these homes have HOA.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes.
So, on all of these, you're showing the price range, and how low it is on what we're selling. Do you have something on the new homes that are being created right now and what the average?
I can
huge
get that
weight?
for you.
I would like to see that because, right now, I mean, these patterns are great. They're fantastic. But, just from the recent experience that I've had, everyone that builds here in South Weaver, isn't looking at buying, or I should say, building and selling a home in the $100,000 to $200,000 range.
No,
And that's the developer's decision. So even
Right.
when we look at these, it's
Well,
hard
and I
to.
would tell you that the city council does have a say-so in it. For some of you who don't know, is my broker, my boss is the mayor of Clearfield. Okay? So I've learned a lot from him, and, we can tell them, hey, as a city council, this is the range we want the houses to be in before you even approve development, and that's up to you. That's not up to me, anything else. But again, I'll get that information for you. and
I'd
stuff.
love to see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
and that's what I'm here for, because guess what? Anytime you have a question, even if I'm not scheduled to be here, you can call me. That's why my card's there. can you get this information from me? I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you personally. So that way you can talk amongst yourselves and everything else. If you, last page I want to go over is the sales report for the last 2 years. And this is on the median and stuff, and then I'm not, well, I shouldn't say the last report there. But if you look at that, and we're not gonna go over it in depth and stuff, because I know you're all smart enough to look at it and stuff, but this is for the last 2 years. These are not numbers that Kenny makes up. I pull all these numbers from the UtahRealEstate.com, which is governed by the Utah Association of Realtors in the state and stuff. So you can see what South Weaver is doing for the last 2 years. You can count them all down, and I ran it through, like I said, yesterday's date. So yeah, as you can see, is this month already, we've done 4 homes already this year, this month. And you can see the price that they're selling at. We're not getting cheaper, we're getting more expensive. You'll see the last report I want to go to is very back, just so we can get for the thing of time. And if you look at it, your absorption rate, they say the absorption rate for a city to make it a healthy living is always to have on hand 6 houses or a 6-month supply of houses. We're at 5.64 right now. So we are living healthy in South Weaver right now. We're about where we should be compared to most. If you want to push that all the way out to 12 months, we'll be down to 3.32, they say, by this time next year. But, you know, the numbers will change. People will move. People who haven't considered moving will do that. So that's why these are numbers as of yesterday and stuff. But, you know, we got to congratulate South Weaver for having close to what they call a healthy market. You go to other cities in northern Utah, they're not even close. They're down to 1 or 2. So we're there, but we also got to look at it. Forbearances, we'll see what happens with forbearances come 1 January. That is when they Fed is going to call a lot of the banks to tell them to come through and stuff, and we'll see what happens. We've had 2 short sales in the that isn't reported in these numbers in the state of in the city of South Weaver. That's better than some, but you know, short sale still hurts our area. You know, so we have to stop and look at it. I don't know if we'll have any or if we'll see any forbearances in South Weaver. I will tell you, we will see them in bigger cities in northern Utah. Last page is all those reports, and it tells you a little bit about it and how the numbers come and everything else. So you can see it and you can say, okay, this is how they make up their numbers and stuff. I thought that would be interesting for you enough to see it and everything else. I wanted to make this quick. They've asked us to come back 3 to 6 months every year. I leave that up to the city council. When do you want to see me next? If you want to see me in 3 months, if you want to see me in 6 months, I will run numbers for you and anything else. I will sit down and make a note so I can get back with Councilmember Hill on those numbers for him and stuff, and I'll reach out to you personally. I do have I know where to get all your numbers at, so I will reach out to you probably about a week. Is there any questions for me? I know this was quick and fast.
I have a couple for
Go
you.
ahead.
Can you explain to me why Governor Cox wanted realtors to come to city councils and mayors?
He felt in talking with a lot of mayors and stuff that you guys were missing real numbers. In that what you thought was going on sometimes isn't really going on, such as if on one of those reports, if you look at our prices and our house ranges hasn't dropped like you hear across. You know, if you look into the news tonight, you'll hear that Salt Lake City's number 7 in the nation and dropping prices right now. Yet most of the cities, 28 counties in this city, in this state right now, you know, they're rising. They're not going down. If you look at South Weaver, our numbers have risen a little bit. They haven't dropped. So he wants city council members, as they start looking at affordable housing and start looking at building and everything else, and they start making decisions, he wants them to have real numbers. And here's your real numbers.
So the first property example that you gave on this one? I don't know what page number that is.
Oh, that was the example of how some cities are starting to think about making
Yeah,
zero lot lines,
zero lot,
Making-
thank you.
making more housing.
So
Not condos.
we have a project similar to that, or at least we're trying to make it similar to that. But for reasons I don't understand, the developer has those listed on the MLS for high 400s into the 500s. So my question is even if we build these, your daughter is still not going to qualify for the smaller
These are
home.
your kids when they
No,
grow up.
I
and-
understand
and I
that.
know all your kids, so.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I feel like we keep hearing this is what the solution is, but I guess I'm not seeing that as
I'm
a
not gonna tell
solution.
you this is the solution. This is just one thing that can be done. The big thing is going back to the developers and saying, and I watched this in another city, 2 weeks ago. They said, I'm sorry, they told the developer, if you're gonna make price the houses at 450,000 above, we're not gonna approve your development. And they went, what? They took 2 steps backwards and they said, we want affordable housing, this and that, and they sent them back to the drawing board.
We
from what-
can't do that.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Well,
That's not within our power.
I know one city did that, so I'm just telling you, one city, I watched the city council do it. So, you know, it's beforehand.
Sorry, I'm just giving a nod to my city attorney over there. Under the case that it was a rezone, I'm not sure.
It hasn't been approved yet, so, you know, they can tell the developer what they want. And it's
Okay.
up to the developer if he wants to agree to those terms or not. You know, until they sign until you actually sign a contract and stuff, you're able to negotiate. It's once you sign that contract that you're now with whatever the developer has proposed because you've agreed to it. So you have to look at it. Now, I know we don't have a lot of room in South Weaver. We don't. Okay, we got less room than most cities. Okay, but you know, and that was in a bigger city.
Yeah.
They told them that, so.
So just one final question for you, and this
Go
is
ahead.
just for my own curiosity, but we're seeing a rise. I have a friend in Texas who's seeing the exact same thing, and we're seeing it in other states. Idaho is seeing it, Arizona is seeing it. We're all seeing this increase. The metro cities are actually what's going down as everybody starts to go further out. So is it truly unique to Utah, or is this a nationwide?
It's about half. Okay, you're seeing the same thing in the bigger cities, but not in the smaller cities across the nation. As you go out and stuff, I was looking at one place called Beech Grove, Indiana. Okay, that's where he's born. And so Beech Grove, Indiana is actually trying to do different things, and they've actually put a halt on building in their city right now. So they can try to figure out different plans and everything else. So it all depends on that city and what their plan is. If you remember, not too long ago, if you're familiar with Morgan for a long time had a halt on building. And they released it, but they've released it in different ways, and they've actually worked with the developers to get what they wanted out there. But for a long time, Morgan didn't have you weren't allowed to build out there. So, you know, every city's starting to stop, put a halt on it and say, what do we do and how we do it? And then the developer comes in and wants it. You know, first we're going to talk about it before we sign anything and stuff. And of course, our city attorney gets their mind going and stuff and everything else because they got to make sure we do everything right and legal. That's all. I feel sorry for our city attorney.
He's good. You're good, huh, Jamie?
So, you know, again, you know, there's things out there, you just gotta be able to see what's right for South Weaver, and that's why you guys are all elected, and I will vote for each and every one of you again.
That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I don't have anything, but thank you very much. The numbers were very helpful.
No problem. I'll
Thank
be
you,
here,
Ken.
and if you got any other questions later, ask me and stuff, and then we'll, and then please tell me how long would you like me back?
Okay.
Okay,
We'll let
We'll
you
leave
know.
that to the mayor.
we'll leave that to the mayor.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, our consent agenda, which consists of 928 or 927 2022 minutes and 2022 street maintenance trash bill award to C&B striping and asphalt for $51,225. Looking for an approval on the consent agenda. If no one has any.
Are we separating
Wait,
those two?
yeah,
or-
sorry, I'm confused.
So at the start of the packet, they said this is something they
This is
learned could be
something-
done.
Yeah, so this
Oh.
is a little bit of a procedural change
So-
to have the awarding of a contract that's just strictly a low bid scenario as part of consent. So you can approve it as written as part of consent. If there's questions or you'd like to talk about it and pull it out as its own separate action item, then, feel free. So just because it's consent doesn't mean you can't talk about it or have questions, but it's a way to kind of do those procedural things that are typically procedural in an efficient manner. So
Understood, thank you.
Yeah.
I got the email, I just didn't put it all together.
So I do have questions on it, on the asphalt. I mean, there's a huge range between the quotes between them, so. And I know you said that you checked on references for the low bidder. How do we know we're gonna get what we expect? If they were way below what we thought it was gonna be, they were quite a bit lower than several others. Are we really getting what we expect, and or after it's done, how do we
Well, let's-
assess that it really is what we wanted or expected?
Brandon, you want to address this?
Sure. So CKC Operations was the second lowest bidder at 61. They're actually the ones that did the crack fill project last year. And I thought they're always pretty competitive compared to some of the others, and so I thought they would probably be the one that would be lowest, but CNB is new. So yes, we got references from them. I called those references. The references were all very positive. The project has certain specifications that they need to meet. We'll have a pre-construction meeting with them where we'll explain what those expectations are, and then we will oversee and watch as they're performing the crack filling to make sure that they're doing it according to the way they should. Outside of that, I guess if it's looking as though they, don't know what they're doing, or they're doing things that are not typical, or not doing things that they should be doing, we'll bring those to their attention. And I guess this is fairly typical, just construction oversight. Just trying to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do. And if they don't, then we meet with them and we talk through it. And if that doesn't improve, then, eventually it could get to the point where we would just say, we don't want you to continue doing any more work. It doesn't appear that there's any evidence that would be a concern at this point, but
Yeah, I was just surprised how low it was compared to some of the others. And just a follow-up question on that, what's the guarantee
on their work.
on any of the work? Is it written in our
Standard,
things,
yes, standard
like
guarantee
within
is the
1
year
year?
from the date of final completion.
And so if stuff is falling apart or not quality, then they come back for free and redo
Correct,
it?
right. And we have bonds to ensure that.
All right, thank you.
And I think I talked to Brandon a little bit about this. Last year's bids were similar. C&K's was way lower than everybody else. There was quite a bit of difference in the bids, so it's similar to what it was last year.
Yes.
That was gonna be my question, you read my mind. I was just gonna ask you what last year's bid looked like, so.
I do have a quick question. So procedural wise, because I like having this as part of the consent agenda, if for any reason the person is not able to fulfill the contract at that time, or they come back and say, I can't do it for that dollar amount, what normally happens on that?
Well, they
They fault, basically.
They had a bid, no,
They
they had
have
a
a-
bid bond.
they have a
Do
bid
they?
bond.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we have the ability to take that bid bond if that's what they do.
Okay,
That's
good. That's,
Yeah.
as long as we had some type of, I'm southern, recompense. There we go. Then I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good now.
this is how, all of these types of things are in all the bids that we do.
Okay.
And they're also aware of the price, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so they usually are given the opportunity.
and I've already visited with him and I asked the straight up question, you know, are you comfortable with your number? And he said, yep.
Well, like I said, I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure procedural-wise, if we're going to be doing this in the consent, that we really don't have to dig into the details of the contract and the process of what happens afterwards. So thank
Yeah.
you.
You don't need to, but I'm always happy to answer questions.
The intent is that these kind of standardized projects would be like this. If there's any project that's outside of the norm that does have different contractual relationships or things like that, we would still bring those forward differently than part of the consent. Most of what we do is somewhat standardized in the contracts and whatnot, but yeah, if there are unique circumstances in any way, we would make sure to highlight those or pull those out of the consent.
Okay, then we'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, you have a motion and we have a second.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, our next item, resolution 22-45, adding special event fees to the consolidated fee schedule. Was provided in your packet. We've talked about that. Is there any discussion anyone has on that, or look for a motion?
So, no, just quick question. Isn't this a discussion item? It's an action one that we're voting on tonight? Or is it a discussion for the council to talk about the stuff that's in it? I'm confused.
It's an action.
we already,
We can
yeah,
discuss it.
we discussed it and
And we
it
can,
came
we can
back.
still discuss it, but we are
Yeah.
moving to approve it or not.
Okay.
I have a question. Okay. What's defined as a city event? A city-sponsored event?
Those would be events that the city is actively sponsoring, hosting, participating in, organizing, and putting on for the residents.
Okay, so hearing that, I'm asking specifically, I guess, about the train in Canyon Meadows Park. So their contract states that you're doing one event a month for the city. Still waiting on a revised contract to come forward. But they hold their own events throughout the year, and then they do special events as well. So where do they fall on this?
Where would you like them to fall on this?
that was a politically.
I'm glad you asked that
Correct.
question. I mean, I think that,
Well,
oh, sorry. I don't know why I'm saying sorry.
no, no,
You interrupted me.
I did interrupt you. I'll be quiet.
Sorry. I don't know. Go ahead, Blair.
Well, no, I mean, this still is if those things are required. I mean, if the train club has an event and they have 100 people there, if they don't require the sheriff, and they don't require the public works, and they don't require, you know, any of that kind of, the fire department to be there, then they don't get a bill for this. Am I saying that incorrectly?
Oh, that's correct.
Okay, that's kind of,
But if they have over 250, which for this Halloween event, they usually do, then it would be.
does it need that? Are we required to do it if it's over 250? We have to have the sheriff there, or we have to?
If it's a non-city event, that's what the,
There are specific thresholds when those would be involved, where fire department has to have somebody on scene, right? Emergency personnel or whatnot. 250 isn't necessarily the number that triggers every single aspect of those requirements. However, 250 was the number the committee talked about as far as number of people where we would want to have the conversation about the need. If they do need those things, right, 250 was the trigger for us saying, you need to have that conversation with us, but it doesn't necessarily mean the event would require it and they'd have to pay for it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Davis County actually requires it at 500. So if you have more than 500, it's required that you have to have all of
Yeah.
these. The idea was this to be more on a buffet style, if you will, where, okay, you're at 250, you're actually a special permit. Are you going to need the police there for crowd control? Are you going to need public works for cleanup, trash removal, those kind of things during the event? Especially if they're on all day or something like that. But we were trying to make sure that it was completely balanced for all the small events. But we also did talk about city-sponsored events, things like the country fair days and, you know, those kind of events that the city sponsored and wouldn't necessarily have fees as part of our sponsoring.
Agreed,
So
agreed.
So I guess I'm still not clear, Blair, how you feel on their Halloween. Like their Halloween event is not city sponsored, it's the train club sponsored.
Why do I get put on the spot?
Well, I
about the
just was
train club?
confused what your thought was.
My thought was, is what have we done in the past with the train club, and has it been a city basic event in the park?
Mhm. And the answer is,
For their Halloween.
we
For the
didn't,
Halloween, I mean, is it, I
No.
mean, it's something that they've agreed to in the contract to do, correct?
no,
No,
Oh, I
not
thought
for
you were just saying-
Halloween.
I thought you were saying it was.
No, they do it.
That was on their own.
Yeah, that's their.
yeah,
Oh,
the contract
don't know.
actually says that they can have their own special events whenever they want, and it doesn't, in the contract, assign a
Yeah.
specific fee to
but
it.
once a month they're doing it for the city. I
Yep.
just thought
Correct.
she had said it was the
Right.
Halloween one as
Yeah.
well. So,
Thank you for correcting me.
So, okay, here's my
I
thoughts
don't have
on
an answer.
city sponsored. I do have an answer.
Sure.
I think that if it's the city saying, hey, we're holding this event. So Angie and I utilized the train for our Easter egg hunt, for example. That wasn't in their contract, but it was a city sponsored event. So that wouldn't be something that they would need to pay for, but whereas or if it's in their contract. But whereas the Halloween and their other private ones are, if they're over 250, I think that would apply, that they would need the, what is this thing called? The
Special event.
The
special
special,
event permit.
uh-huh.
What I'm worried about though, is that the train company does that Halloween event to help with their costs. And I'm worried that we may have just eaten their costs.
But as Dave said, they need to get the special permit. But it doesn't mean he has to charge them all those fees.
So they still have to have an
go through the
application.
process of the application and the permit, and then they decide whether or not what's
They
needed.
need-
But they do need the deposit.
Because there's enough
Yeah.
people over there that
Right.
if the parks people have to go clean something up, it may be a couple $100.
Mhm.
And if they're using it as a fundraiser, then we talked about that last time. If it's an organization trying to make money, then it's justified that
Uh-huh.
they have to pay for whatever the city had to spend to help them
To
make
help
their
them have
money.
it.
That's not going to the city.
Mhm.
So I agree with that.
There's one way to think about the train club events for themselves that still have a heavy usage of our residents, right? And that could be that the city is sponsoring their event, not by hosting it for them, but potentially by waiving any applicable fees, right? That we are potentially a sponsor of them, where we're encouraging it, we want it to happen. Yes, it's their own event. That's one way to think about the Halloween, freight train event itself, but I agree that the freight train event is a little bit different than their monthly public run days.
So the reason I'm asking specifically about the train though, I feel like that is really gray area.
Well, by the numbers.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, that's all it
the,
really comes down to is the numbers.
the
how much-
process I would recommend, you have from my vantage, a delicate dance when it comes to liability. That if the city sponsors something, then you arguably are in the chain of authority on that event and could be sued if something were to happen to somebody. My preference would be to keep it a non-city sponsored event unless it is something the city's directly responsible for planning and executing, but then have a fee waiver process in place where the city can consider an application for a fee waiver and then waive the fee for these types of events where it's run by a nonprofit, it's open to anybody.
And that way you don't eat at their opportunity to fund their organization and fund their activities, but you don't become responsible for any injury or incident that may occur at the site.
That was one of my two questions, was the fee waiver option. If you have a charity that's coming in, but it's gonna have a lot of things to do we have that option written in here to waive it? It's up to you to decide what it is. This is just the maximum we can charge.
It's not written specifically as a waiver option. No, it's not written like that. The idea of an event having a certain number of people, right, hitting that 250 threshold to have the conversation doesn't automatically mean that they will require all of these elements and the fees that could be charged. My understanding, and Jamie can correct this statement if it is totally inaccurate, my understanding is that the consolidated fee schedule by its very nature has the element of the city's ability to waive a fee. That it's not a required that you have to charge that, but it gives the ability to charge fees up to that point. And for the most part, it is just a list of the fees. We're not in the practice of waiving fees very regularly, just from a consistency standpoint. But if there are scenarios that you want us to operate like that as staff, then we probably should write that down or have that procedurally of what's the criteria for waiving fees or whatnot. But it's not practice for us to waive fees, although the consolidated fee schedule by its very nature allows for us to have flexibility that way.
Okay, and then the second question was, assuming they don't think there's gonna be 250 there and 700 show up, is there a retroactive aspect that we can go and say, yeah, we didn't think we were gonna have to clean up, but boy, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that the city had to do? What option occurs there?
I don't believe we have anything written along those lines
Right, yeah.
as far as a
things in there.
post-event.
Do we need something like that, or would
It's a
we
great
just need it?
consideration.
I mean, if they come in and say, yeah, we only think we're gonna have 230 people and it ends up being 3 times that.
There's very little you can do during an event, other than if their permit is for number X and then they exceed it by a measurable amount, you can go in and stop the activity from continuing. So you could call the sheriff and do that.
Could we pull from the deposit?
It wouldn't allow you to pull an additional deposit, but it would. I have seen this happen in cities before where they anticipate a small crowd. And so the number of EMT, restrooms, food, those kinds of things that they have on hand are only enough for, say, up to 1,000 people, and then 5,000 show up. You can stop the event until they get the services in place that are required to handle that kind of crowd. That gets really hard, right? When do you make that decision? Who makes it? The city looks like the bad person in that event. I think if you're only exceeding by a small amount where you think their representation to you was inaccurate, you wouldn't draw additional money from them, but I would take that into account the next time they apply for the same activity. And if they don't make their numbers accurate, you could take that into account and deny a permit on that basis. Or is what you're asking, Joel, they're putting a deposit. We're not specifically saying that as a quote unquote cleaning deposit, like it's a facility or something
Right,
like that.
because in here it says a refundable damage deposit. And if we could do something, or if you go over the numbers, or something like that to bump you up to the other. I don't know if that's appropriate for something that we spell out, exactly what the deposit is, but that may be a way that we could, retroactively go and say, no, you were actually over 500 and should have paid this. I don't know.
You could increase the deposit amount where you give yourself a little bit of a buffer, if their estimate is off, but I don't know that that's going to get you. Quinn's example is you have 250 and then you go to 750. Well, if you're 3 times the estimate, I don't think the treble deposit would be something you'd want to do. But if you wanted to add a 10 to 25% contingency, that seems reasonable. I think where Jamie's coming from is actually a really valuable point of reference, that these types of permits, this or other types of permits, is the city saying you are allowed to do X, Y, Z. And we've taken it kind of as a frame of, this is a planning document. If you do need, services, then there's a charge for those services and whatnot. But there also is that kind of regulatory element to it, that you're allowed to do specific things. You're permitted to, do these things. And if you exceed that permit, then there's ramifications. That's not necessarily written into it currently.
So I have just a couple more comments. One, I appreciate Paul. I feel like we need to make this consistent. So just address where it says number 2 to read 299, if that's our threshold, 1 to 299. So there's no question there. And I appreciate this being like an a la carte type of thing, but can someone explain to me what scenario, if we have 500 participants, we would need public fire safety and EMS, and what scenario we have 500 where we wouldn't need that?
The short answer is the thresholds of the peak crowd and then the number of medical providers and restroom facilities and things like that that you need are established by the County Department of Health. And there's a table, all of the tables in front of me, but for emergency medical providers, an example, if the lowest number in their table is 2,500 people, and they require 2 medical providers for 2,500. And then as you go up, the highest number they have is 47,500, and you have to have 20 medical providers for that size crowd. I think the reason for the 250 is that South Weber is a smaller place and you have smaller venues. And so you want to be able to regulate the traffic impacts and things like that at a level commensurate with the size of your city and the infrastructure you have available. But the default would be the county tables for
Okay.
these kinds of things.
So if we had, I guess what I just want to make sure is if they apply for this and we have someone that's hosting a concert, regardless of what it is, a concert for 500 people, and then someone's holding a yard sale for a benefit for 500 people, are we requiring the same fee? Like, we're saying it's a la carte, but really it's not if they're having 500.
I think the emergency personnel is a little bit out of our hands. Some of the other ones,
But Public Works cleaning up after 500, cleaning up after 500. I'm just trying to see, show me how it's different, so I can explain this to a resident when they have this situation.
So kind of went, on a 500, I won't use that one because that one is for the county, but let's say 450 people there. If they are there for a Lawrence Welk dance-off, we may need more medical. But we would need less garbage recycling, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but, and when you do the application, the city does have the ability to say, okay, just because you don't want the cops there, we're still going to put them there. So if you're going to do Blink, 182, and you're going to have everyone there, yeah, we're going to have the police there.
Yeah,
And we're going to require that as
Okay,
part of it.
will you let me know when you host a Lauren Welk dance-off?
a few examples from within South Weber, and maybe one of the things to consider with this is there's a permit process to have a gathering of a certain size, and that's what we're talking about. And then there's a separate but concurrent process for if you want to rent city facilities. And with the rental of city facilities, we require a waiver. And in that waiver document, we'll tailor it to the event being held. And some real examples from within South Weber is your community center. It's been rented for knitting clubs, and we don't require insurance or any of those things for that type of event. It's been rented for WWE style wrestling promotions and MMA fights. And the insurance and the medical that we demand for that exceeds what the county would require, and we just write it into the agreement that they sign, and we tailor it to that particular event.
Thank you,
So-
that's the clarification that I needed, thank you. Yep.
She related.
That's right.
Now, one thing that I do still want to bring up again is that when looking at the public safety and fire, again, we're not doing this to make money. And to me, still, if I'm gonna have 305 people at a, let's say whether they're using the train or whatnot, the train's probably a bad example. So they're going out there for a car show, and more than 350 people are gonna show up. $100 to $200 per hour. I just don't see that South Weaver is spending that money at that level per hour to be recruited. I can almost see it as if it was a flat fee, but yeah, an all-day event would go longer, but I don't know many events that have 300 to 499 people that could afford $200 an hour going out just to have public safety, fire, and EMS. So it's one of those that I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at and saying, is that the actual cost? Because, for example, Davis County Sheriff's Department, they're $70 an hour. So to me, it's kind of a huge uptick that I don't think is necessary. I don't think we should be making money off of this, especially since there are so many that are, wanting to do these kind of events. We've had 2 this year. So I don't know. I would like to
So
see that.
correct me if I'm wrong. But if it was 305, I'm assuming the uptick from 75 to 100 was because you probably had to provide another person. And so you're getting charged that, no, whether, I actually think if it's one person or whatever it is on the 1 to 209, $75, the city's probably losing money. When you add up all the benefits and you've seen what we put in there for salaries, $75 doesn't cover it, because I know it doesn't cover my employees. Well,
So if it's a 5-hour event?
I agree. But what do you pay a plumber when he comes to your house? $139 an hour. Yeah. And we're not charging that. I know what I charge for a construction worker, and a laborer, I'm more than $75 an hour right now. So I actually think our public safety numbers are low, because that's more than we get charged per man hour currently from Davis County.
Well, that was my request, was to just validate that those numbers were accurate. So.
Yeah, no, I actually think those are acceptable if it's not per person, it's by the quantity, because you may end up with 3 public safety or EMS over there, depending on what it is. You got to somehow graduate that, and if it's 75 at the low end, I think 75 you'd be probably losing money. But that's my opinion.
No,
Yeah.
That's why the question was to have them validate that it was going to be a dollar value that we're basing that on, not just a.
Yeah, it's not a shot in the dark. Those numbers were with, like you said, the idea to not make money, but just charge cost. And for Davis County Sheriff's Office, they provided the number. They said, this is the number. And our fire department came up with the number for the EMS.
Thank you.
I was surprised that DCSO's number 2.
Okay, any other questions? Someone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I make the motion that we approve, yes. I move to approve resolution 22-45, adding special event fees to the consolidated fee schedule, CFS, with the following amendment of chapter 23, paragraph 2, to read additional $75 for each 100 people above 299.
I'll second that.
Sorry. Special or city sponsored? Do we want to?
Isn't that already in there?
We're just specifying what is considered city sponsored.
Well, remember, Jamie was saying fewer city sponsored,
Mhm.
more fee waiver, so that the city isn't. So the city
Does
isn't
it
directly.
need to have something in there?
My opinion is that as the train club agreement comes forward, we could spell out more clearly with them specifically whether we're considering it a city-sponsored event or their own private event on behalf of the city, something like that.
Yeah, or maybe something with.
That we
the
could
leagues.
clarify that in that agreement specific to them rather than,
Do we have
Here.
any other entities that we would be? That's it, right? Okay, I think that works.
You good with? Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Quinn,
I second.
let's do a roll call vote then, starting with Blair.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous.
Can I just ask
Motion
one more
carries.
question? Or I should ask it before. How does this apply to like a, right,
That's what I was thinking.
a
So
church,
what?
a
I'm
church
sorry, what?
function? Because we have some church groups here that will have a summer youth activity that there's 300 to 500. Are they needing to come get a permit?
what would you like?
Yeah, we have it on it, talking about non-residents.
Well,
So,
no.
yeah,
That's
Well,
what
they
you
would
guys
be,
said.
They're
they would be
residents.
residents.
We're talking about,
Just
would it
like
fall
a
under charitable
super activity?
or family gathering?
yes, for South Weaver, that is a family gathering.
Yeah, it really is.
Well,
You count the calls.
they would most likely be renting the park or reserving the park anyway, or the Bowery.
Right.
And I think that discussion can be had, because most of the time we don't have to clean up after them, because they would clean up. But
We did talk about the idea that every Sunday people are gathering more than 250 in certain areas of the community. And, you know, every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or whatnot, you could end up with a gathering depending on, you know, how large the religious group area is that they're gathering with. And so there wasn't an intention to charge the religious organizations in the community, but if that's not clear, then
well, but
Maybe
at
we-
the same time, if they're still causing either the wear and tear on the fields or the need for people to come and clean up after them, those kind of things, then they still need to pay the same amount. We can do a fee waiver if we see something, and we work with, you know, different religious organizations, but even if it is, if it's a super event where they're needing to take the entire park, then yeah, they really do need to pay the same.
I think we should have the same type of planning conversation about their needs, right?
And the other one, again, I apologize, should have brought this up before we voted on it. The school, we have Highmark that has games that pull a couple hundred people at times. Are they, since they're on school property, because our thing says public or private property, how does it apply to them? I'm just afraid we're addressing one issue without realizing there's a couple other occurrences that happen all the time in our city that we don't charge. And now did we just suddenly require them all to get a permit?
And that is the question again, based on, again, how much damage they're going to do and how much they're going to do or need to pay for it. But
But
any of the places that have a sporting event are already working through the rec department to be able to have that field. It's not something that they just get, and they are being charged as a sports fee per event on the field itself. And we haven't anything that talks about sports needing additional, say like an EMS or something on there, but that is something that we can go back and bring to amend or change or whatever.
I hear you asking about school events specifically, though, that they're not renting a public facility, right? They're doing it on their own. I know that at many of those sporting events that I've attended that are school sponsored, they have, you know, the police presence or whatnot that they've arranged for on their own. But that's a great question.
Yeah, I have an answer. So what you're approving is the fee schedule, which is the maximum amount the city can charge for a special event permit. Some of the questions you're asking relate to the special event permit ordinance. And there's a carve out in the ordinance for an event or activity at a site intended for such event or activity. And you have listed in that sporting events and tournaments and things like that. Oh,
That's not ours.
oh, Trevor's telling me it pulled up wrong when I did my search. Well, I think the answer generally is the same, that if you're interested in looking at those kinds of questions, we ought to look at what the city ordinance says and make sure that it addresses those circumstances properly. Maybe that's work for the code committee to take on. But I
We
don't
like
think,
that answer.
I don't think you're changing those standards or those rules at all by approving a special event permit fee.
I appreciate that. I think it's something we need in place, and I like the understanding that there is flexibility. If need be, then we can come back with an amendment.
It does sound to me like there is city code related parameters that we need to kind of clarify rather than the fee schedule. But
Right.
even adopting the fee schedule, it feels like let's have a conversation about how special events show up in city code. And they may not show up that clearly in our city code.
Thank you.
If at all.
I know.
Okay, we'll move into our discussion items. Item number 7. Want to begin a discussion on the city center planning progress. Back at our retreat, we talked a little bit about this in developing our vision and our mission for the city. We talked about a community with a heart and charm with a heart, and talked a little bit about our city center would possibly be the center of that heart. We realize that this is getting a city center here in South Weber is quite a ways down the road. And so we wondered if we need to begin looking at that now and deciding how we go about bringing that center to be, or do we see it that it's far enough down the road that we don't need to proceed with it at this time. We talked about it, like I say, at our retreat, and so we just wanted to bring it up and see where the council thought we should go with this. So, open that up for some discussion. If we decide, yes, we want to, then, could we want to get involved in making this decision?
Well, and it goes back to the comment that was made earlier by Kenny, is we don't have a lot of property here in South Weber. And part of me, and I've said this to everybody, and everybody knows my feelings, is I think we've let several opportunities, if it would have been master planned or planned beforehand. I mean, obviously, it's like what we're doing with Public Works. I mean, you start the budget process and it's been a 6-year process and we're still not even out of the ground. I mean, this could have been a 20-year process, and maybe we would have owned all this right here across the street, and this would be our city center. And so I don't think it should be kicked down the road any further. But do I have an idea of what can happen? I don't, because, with this developing across the street, to me, it kind of blows. I know there's other opportunities, but they're compact. They're much more compact opportunities for a true city center. Because building at the east end or the west end doesn't feel like a city center and a community to me. So
Well,
anyway, that's my thoughts. I don't want to kick it down the road, but how do you proceed? I need ideas.
I kind of brought some of this up to Brandon a while back and talked about what we could do around Central Park. I mean, we have, as a city, we have already the fire station over there. There are some land options and things that we can do to it. Like you said, if we have it planned, that maybe we could build and move over to that direction. It definitely needs to be a long-term plan, but with the school right there, with our family activity center right there, it just kind of seems like a good place. And Central Park is geographically, you know, kind of the heart of the center of South Weber. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And yeah, I do think we need some ideas though on what would be, you know, what we would consider, you know, a heart. You know, does that include small commercial? Does that include some type of, you know, moving or condensing all of the city buildings all around that area eventually, except for the ones that are going to be down at the Public Works area? You know, is it, you know, will this area then go away and be sold, or some of the other land sold or whatnot, that would allow us to hear, this is where we're eventually going to put the new city hall whenever that happens. Obviously not in the next couple of years, but it is, you know, it's something like that. So that's kind of when I see and we talk about it, it's a place where people from South Weber can get together, hold different special events, you know, and do things as a city. One of the things I would like to see over there is a lot of the park having a lot more family friendly, you know, whether it's, you know, barbecue pits or these kind of things, or something that would give people that may not have the yard to be able to have either an outdoor party or, you know, a big grill or even a fire pit, something, I don't know. Again, just throwing things out there. A place where they could go to do it and others could see and join. Maybe an amphitheater would finally go over there because that is where we always have the bulk of the country fair events. So those are just kind of the ideas that I think could be done, but I agree with you. If we don't plan for it now, yeah, somebody could come in and take the land that maybe we would be able to get instead. I don't know.
So where do we begin? I feel that this is a decision that the full residents of South Weaver need to be involved in. You know, I would like to see a beginning point to send maybe a questionnaire out, or do some type of a meeting where they can come and give us some ideas and gather the ideas from the residents on just what they would like, where they would like, rather than us as individuals here on the council make that decision. This is their city. I think more input we can get from our residents on this, better.
Would you recommend the city or the city council back that, or planning commission?
I have an idea.
Yeah.
As much as none of us want to admit it, maybe some more than others, our general plan update is technically in the not so distant future. And where this is master planning, perhaps it should be included in that general plan. We do open houses and surveys and things. I think or actually it would be the planning commission, if it's in the general plan, would be putting out something for the public to review that has this specified in it, you know, this master planning. I agree completely with Blair. I think that it needs to be planned for, or else we're going to be hodgepodging later, which is really what we're already doing. I like the idea of, when I thought of at our combined meeting and a retreat, I don't know if you've been to Plain City, but Plain City has their Plain City Square, and it's kind of been similar to our Central Park, except for it was surrounded a little bit better with businesses. And I think that we've already kind of got a good start with our FAC and our fire department. We're master planning City Hall over there somewhere. I don't know. I like the idea of an amphitheater, but maybe we can put suggestions out to the public on how they feel about that. I've heard from numerous residents just recently that would really love to be able to have some sort of indoor type of arena, that we could do something similar to like the Pickleville play, not Pickleville. Well, Pickleville too, but what's Washington Terrace?
Terrace Plaza.
Terrace Plaza, thank you. Or even Zickfield, something for a drama committee here in South Weber. I wouldn't necessarily think that should go in the center of town. I think we should consider like outside traffic. I think that would be a great one for the S-curve, but it would be an opportunity for our residents to be able to utilize, but also maybe get some dollars from outside uses as well. I don't know, that's just kind of my thought, but I think if we kind of start putting out some feelers now, it's something that we could give to the planning commission when it comes time to update that general plan, because that will go into them at the same time.
Anyone else have ideas?
I like the idea of a survey. I think it's a very sensitive topic, though. If we start talking about a location within the city, then we start getting into a stance where property owners like, oh, the city's gonna want to have some of our property. And so I think we've got to be very careful of where we're talking about putting it, but maybe the survey could be of what we want to have more so rather than where.
A thought on that, just to plant a seed, there's something called a charrette. Has anybody heard of a charrette before? Essentially, you get around a table, you have a map in front of you, and you kind of do a working group of, and you don't have to have like an actual location map. You can just say, here's a square piece of land, or here's a piece of land. On this table, design a city center. What would that look like to you? What are the amenities that are important? And then have conversations, and you can drive kind of in-depth conversations, because surveys are good, but sometimes they're base level measures and we're not digging deeper. And so charrettes can allow you to dig deeper in that.
Mayor, if I may, from my perspective, I hear some really cool ideas starting to generate, and, different thoughts about location and what's included. Does that include city hall? Does that include performing arts? Does that include recreation? Does that include commercial? It's easy for us to all shift into what should be the city center rather than how we should come to determine what should be the city center, right? It's easier to talk about what's included than how do we decide together as a community. And that's what I heard the mayor say right at the beginning is how do we go about making the decision? The idea of including the community and having it be community-based was along those lines, how to include the community and when to include the community, whether that's individual property owners or whether that is, the general community. Survey is an idea, focus groups is an idea. You could, do charrette. There are different methods for gathering that input, but I think tonight the decision or the desire really is to kind of frame the process of decision making, not so much the endpoint of the decision making. And so, if the principle is let's include the community in this, as staff, we can maybe help out in that and give you some ideas of how the community could be involved and what's the format and things like that. Again, how to make the decision, not so much what is the decision.
Okay, well, I love the idea of getting the community involved. What that looks like, I'm totally up for options, whether that's a survey that simply says, what would you love to see for our city center? And what elements of other cities do you appreciate or value? Or what Hallmark movies do you enjoy the most that has the best city center? Okay,
Big
So-
Christmas trees.
right. And then we can kind of go, I think that would, to me, that seems like a good starting point.
Right.
Get public feedback, and then we can go to one of these other options, meeting with different residences, handing this over to a different committee to work on. However, but I also agree with Quinn, it's hard to start pinpointing places because then you don't know what you're gonna get, so. But I love the idea. I feel like I hope it wouldn't take until the next general plan to plan all this. Because I hope we're not doing our general plan for at least 3 more years.
Well, I think it was,
2024.
That's when it has to be done.
By 2024?
that's not that far out.
It'll be a quick one.
I'm just saying, if you want to put it in a process of a timeline, we have to do that anyway. And if we want to master plan something, that seems like a great document to put it into. it's not so far out that it's years away, but it is far enough out that we can start working towards it.
So one of my thoughts though, sitting here looking at the map of the city. So let's say that takes through 2024, 25 before we even have an idea. I have a feeling that many, like, let's say it is around Central Park or it's down by the S curve or whatever. What if some of those properties were to come for sale? Can we, I mean, when you get down to kind of the nitty gritty, the base thing we started with the public works is we've had to start budgeting money. Can we not start in the next budget process to just start budget money? Because we have to have the funds there. We have an idea that we are going to have to purchase property somewhere or exchange or sell property or whatnot, but we still need funds. And you can, there's certain areas where those properties probably will come available before the next 2 years. And without getting into all of those details or whatnot. And so maybe that's a, you know, another discussion in a committee meeting, or it could even be a closed session because there's several ideas that could be bounced around about real estate purchases that we could start planning for.
I think the decision of where is probably one of the first decisions that should be made, right? Include based on finances and other
But then you get
opportunities.
back to
and
Quinn's
whatnot.
point is, then does it become harder to get that property
Yeah.
without it being a closed session?
An appraisal won't take it into account the future of when it's going to be, so I don't think they could actually raise the price too much. If
Or
we
they
had a
could-
real estate agent.
Or they can just say no. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Is they can say, well, we want X above just because you're the city and you have the money. Well, we don't have the money.
Right.
Your point's a wise one, that there ought to be a delineation between the discussion of what you want to do and then a separate discussion about the where and how much
And how are we gonna?
and the commercial terms associated with that, and any conversation that you think would affect your ability to acquire property on good commercial terms, you can have that portion of the conversation in closed session.
That's what I was hoping for.
So it sounds like we've delineated right here the difference between the public input desired about what elements should be included, what activities, what opportunities, what, venues or whatnot, what's included in the city center, but then the determination of its location has to be a little bit of a separate and distinct conversation than that public, survey or focus group or charrette or whatever methodology is there, that those are two separate and distinct kind of conversations. Are we all agreed in that? Was that head nods?
I think so.
I agree, but I also think that we need to take into account that the next couple of years, we might not have the funds to be able to do anything. And, if I definitely don't want to raise taxes or do anything like that. If we have it, we definitely need to be budgeting. But, we've also got to do this really smart.
I think a conversation of how to make it happen, right, is a really important thing after we kind of go through the steps, because there's a few ways to make it happen. One, we could fund it all ourselves. Another is to incentivize development to help us fund it, right? And so that's, I think we can look into that as we look at feasibility studies for different areas. That's a consideration, not necessarily the determining factor, but a consideration to look at.
I guess just one of the comments, when we do, or if we do a survey, it seems like it would be useful to us if we did it like the recreation survey that went around. Because I know if you say, well, what would you like at the city center? Well, we want a splash pad, we want a
Yeah,
theater, we want
library.
this. Everybody's gonna want everything. And you need to put a dollar value. How much
Agreed.
more are you willing to pay
Mm,
if we have a splash pad, if we have a theater, if we have that's the reality of the information we need. Because
Agreed.
if we just say, what do you want? We're gonna get everybody's wish list. And now we'll need 20 acres for our city center, and we can't afford any of it. So I don't know how that goes over to the public to say, what would you like? And how much would you be willing to pay extra to have that. But anyway, that's the
I
reality.
agree. I think that's an important point because you have these surveys, but yeah, splash pad, a library, like we have no ability to really bring a library, and we've already looked into splash pad. It's far more than it's probably worth. And it's not that the public doesn't care, it's just that they don't have that information. So the more information they have, the better results we're going to get in that survey.
I keep hearing people say survey. Is that the methodology that is preferred?
I think to begin.
I'm
with.
open to a bunch of, if there's other options, I'm open to hearing what else is there. Survey is basically one thing we've utilized
Right.
in the past.
To Trevor's point about kind of the nuances of it and being able to have enough information, to have those conversations. It seems like a survey is very much kind of the shotgun approach, and it's hard to get that information out. So I just keep hearing that word and wondering
Right.
if there's
No,
an
I
expectation
agree.
or a desire that that's the methodology.
I feel like what you're saying is we kind of have to have some sort of plan to offer the public, and then the public can say, you're on or you're off. But to just be like, what's your plan, public? It'll probably be worse than this is going right now, because there's only six of us.
And we're all different. I mean, if I was to receive a survey, I would rather them say, here's where the city has a plan for our city center. What would you like to see on it?
And does it,
In this area.
Uh-huh.
And then it makes a difference on what I would want on it
Right.
versus on one of the parks or,
Well, and that's what I'm
Mm.
saying, is that we
So-
give them an area rather than
Yeah.
what would you like to see
But-
citywide or something.
Yeah.
But it's, again,
and
it's hard for all the points that were brought up.
I think even the
I don't
term
wanna
city
say more
center is
than that.
difficult too to convey out, right? Because that, when I say city center, everybody's mind will immediately see Hallmark movies, or they'll see downtown Ogden, or they'll see, city center or City Creek, and it's like, what are you talking about on city center? Well, are we getting a grocery store now? Like, oh, this is cool. Like, so I think that's a really hard thing with surveys, is that we've got to frame the conversation. So sometimes it's best here's a few elements, here's ones that we picked out, which ones are most important to you? Or here's these things that we picked out, which ones are most important to you? That type of thing to get input on what's maybe feasible in the area, that are attainable, because if they're not attainable, then it's just another plan that gets frustrated by the president.
So can I suggest then that we bring this to the PR committee to discuss this? Is everyone okay with that? Get input and then we can go.
I do think we need
From
to
there?
take the step of, whether it's us or staff, find a bunch of actual examples so that we can look at, real places that have done this, like you were saying, be able to see where cities have actually put in some type of city center and what that does incorporate for the surveys then. So that, like you said, we're asking real things. And I think the only way we can do that is with some type of examples to go off of. So yeah, if you guys are willing to do that, that'd be great.
Do we
Does everyone agree that falls under PR?
Good with it.
Or does finance and admin wanna?
I think,
Just kidding.
I think it's an iterative process. because,
Right.
You guys in the PR committee can come together with the initial thing, and then when you start talking, the financial aspect and other things, so. But yeah, I think PR is a good place to start.
Okay, but I have a question, Mayor and Angie, do you guys feel that we have enough direction as PR to go somewhere with this
Three of us?
from these guys?
Oh, from
I mean, what direction?
From what you heard.
tonight?
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Okay, that works.
What I'm hearing is that the council wants to basically gather some intel, see some examples, put together not a draft plan necessarily, right? A full fleshed out plan, but have something for the community to react to rather than just say, what do you want? That there's some work to be done on the council level before that becomes a full-on public input proposition. Am I accurate in summarizing like that?
Or staff, yeah, or a combination of both.
Yeah, we'll support the council's work on that, and we'll help make sure that you have what you need and that we all are able to take that to the public when it's ready. But that would, to me, that's an important distinction of we're not necessarily going out to do a public campaign at this point. We want to do some work together first to have something for the community to react to.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, our next discussion item, if you thought that one was fun. And chapter 5. Article C, residential multifamily R7 zone. So there's been, this was brought up to planning commission, and I'm sure that most of us watched that, and so we felt we needed some further discussion, so we brought this back on a discussion rather than an action item. So we're gonna open it up to the council on seeing which way we want to go from here. And we're gonna start with Joel down there, Joel.
I think is all wonderful. Actually, the only problem that I see with this, and I do like what's going on with it. I think that if we're going to have this change to it, that we ought to take the opportunity to put in a general set of things that need to be done. Does that make sense? So,
The mayor's
If-
really loud right here. it was Haley. I'm sorry, Mr. Dills, could you repeat that?
thank you, Councilwoman Petty. I'm just saying that if we're going to all this trouble to put something into code specifically for R7, of which we only have a few left, we really ought to take the time also to put in something that's a benefit for the city, not just for the developers. There's no way I can deny it. I was pretty much against and voted against the just making this a good deal for everybody else, just to be able to have the zero lot lines. So I think that if we're going to do zero lot lines, we need to take some time as a council and say, okay, with this change to R7, do we want to work with setbacks? Do we want to work with the full size of the driveway? Do we want to work with trees? Do we want to work with lighting? Do we want to work with anything else right now that would help give us the projects we want to see in R7?
So you're saying design standards.
Yes, and I'm not talking a huge one. I'm not talking that we have to go to form-based code or anything else. I'm just talking about if we're going to have an R7 and we've got a few more in the city, what are the few things that really strike us as, okay, we're doing this, we're allowing now for townhouses. For townhouses, what else is a requirement that we'd like to see? That's really, and that's why I was saying, maybe the length of the driveway, the width of the garage that we talked, anything that actually just says, okay, we're getting townhouses now in here as a zero lot line, and it has been recommended that that's what we start going towards, but we don't necessarily have any other part of the code that says, okay, now that we're dealing with townhouses, what should they look like? What should the minimum specifications be? And that's the part that I think this is missing, right? It was part of kind of an overreaching more project of what we're going to do with R7 going forward as well. But I think right now, if we just look at R7, what are we going to do for the few properties that we have in it, not worrying about what's later going to be redeveloped and things. What standards do we want? So that's my idea and suggestion on it.
Can we put in design standards, architectural design standards, without doing, I don't know, an R5 with a bonus to R7 to get that and doing a development agreement?
Yeah, you just have to be strategic about how you do it. So you would,
But if you specify them right in the R7, then you can't do that.
that's correct. So
That's
it
what
would
I'm
have to
saying.
come
How do
with
you-
a-
How do you come to
some
that
kind
if
of
you
bonus.
can't put the words in here?
Well, and that was the overreaching project that we're looking at, is being able to say, okay, we're going to do say like an R5 and, bump up if you want to meet the higher density, then here's what we require for it. But we still have R7s that are being developed right now throughout the city. So if we're going to put in a townhouse, and I'm just talking specifically townhouse, not a rewrite of it all, what would we want on it? Do we want to give, no matter what, whether it would be at a lower R or what, a change to the roof and height if it's going to be by the angles of the roof? So a lot of places out there, we've got just flat roofs so they can meet our requirement of 35 feet, you know, for the height of the building. Do we want that to be able to be changed if you're going to put in, you know, a certain type of roofing or, you know, change in the dimension? Because if not, we don't have anything in code to prevent it from just being a square box.
I
So,
totally
yeah.
am in agreement.
So those are the kind of things that I'm saying, that even if it was nothing else changing, because we've heard numbers that this could take a long time for the process of you know, making any other type of architectural design code or standard code. What would we want right now for townhouses to look like? What would be the minimum requirement? So yeah, that's the part that I think, even at the basic level, what's the lowest common denominator? We can work on the higher afterwards.
Just to comment, all of our R7 properties that we have in the city are entitled right now. So they all either have submitted an application or have an approved site plan subdivision or have been completely built out. So it doesn't have any bearing on those because they are having entitled use already. If they came back in and reapplied, then that's when that new process would apply.
Which is what would happen if they need to replat their development. I'm not gonna eat that cookie. I'm gonna tell you what my thoughts are. So the design standards, that's what we sat and talked about for at length in code committee for, I feel like, a month and a half, trying to figure out how do we increase our design standards with the setbacks that we have with the legislature that they put on it. I'm not really sure what happened. I listened to the entire second PC meeting. I only got through half of it, so maybe you can enlighten me what happened. But the code committee had discussed creating an overlay where we drop our R7 down to like an R5 or an R6, and then we create an overlay for R7, basically saying that if you want bonus density, you can do certain development standards to get it. And that was one way to enhance the exterior and the development standards. I'm not meaning to leave you out. I'm like turn this way, but you know the story. So I don't know. I know I heard it talked briefly the first PC meeting, but the second PC meeting it wasn't discussed at all. And I'm not entirely sure why the reasoning for that was. I know the first PC meeting they wanted to kind of in talking in code committee, we talked about different styles of home, mansion style homes and cottage homes and things like that. And so we brought those to them, that idea to them, and they wanted to see those more in depth, but that didn't come back necessarily either. So I'm not sure what happened, but by and large, the decision here tonight was the code committee said, okay, basically the way I see it, really simplifying, is we can either choose to add townhomes and zero lot lines to R7, and it will be exactly what has been approved already, and that will be what we continue to get. If we would like to have higher development standards for R7 and townhomes, specifically, we talked in code. Who is that?
I have no idea.
Anyway, sorry, they just usually it's people who've left this meeting, not. Anyway, if we want, let's see, we talked about better exterior standards like hardy board or brick, something like to that stone. Yes, like dimensions in the roof lines. We talked about not having the exterior of the home facing a commuter street. Those are kind of some of the ideas we bounced back and forth. We wanted to hear on the commission level about. But if we do that, the writing's on the wall, I'm just gonna say it, and may not, should not, but we're playing a little bit of a gambling game here on if a certain property is going to replat and go to this R7 standards with these better ones, or if we're just going to pass our R7, let them be able to have single lot lines, zero lot lines, sorry, and single plats, and be able to go forward.
So, I mean, but they could also come, and maybe I'm stating this incorrectly, because I actually like that idea. But the particular development you're talking about could come and apply and ask for an exemption from that and still ask for the R7 density.
So it'd be an overlay, so you don't get an exemption. It's like getting an exemption from code. Am I correct?
Yeah,
If they wanted the R7.
The
they'd
granting
have to
of
go-
the overlay would be a legislative decision of the council, just like any zoning decision.
But
Can I,
if we
can I
grant the
clarify,
overlay-
can I clarify one thing about
Right,
planning
yes, as soon as
commission?
you answer this question real quick.
Yeah.
If we grant the overlay, can we excuse them from the overlay requirements?
It depends whether you enact the overlay as an ordinance that's generally applicable to any property within that zone, or whether you enact the overlay as part of a development agreement that's specific to their performance and their conditions. And I think you have that choice with them because they currently have a development agreement. And if they want to do something different than that, they would have to reapply unless it were something that is already allowed within the underlying zone.
I think 75% of that went over my head.
Let
but
me,
Blair seems
I'll try to state it differently. Sorry, I may have used too much legalese, but it's zoned R7 and it's zoned commercial highway. And so they could scrap their currently permitted application and development agreement and apply for something that's allowed straight up through those zones. Another option would be if you want to introduce an overlay zone, you can introduce the overlay zone as applicable to that property, regardless of who owns it and who applies. And then that would be, I guess, whoever applies under that zone would then be entitled to that, to any use under that overlay. Or the third option would be, don't adopt the overlay as applicable to that property and any applicant, but do something similar in a new development agreement with this individual applicant. And then you tailor the development agreement to be exactly what you want it to be, what you
So
would
we could-
negotiate with them.
We could allow the R7 zero lot lines, but redo a development agreement that included certain design aspects.
Right,
Is what you're saying.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and forgive me for not communicating it
I
that
think
way
it's
at the
late and
outset.
then
That's, I was
It's not as
thinking they
smart.
could do it all through a development agreement
if they agree to it.
if they
Right.
agree to that, but that's their choice. They may not ever choose to come back and replat. They may leave it as is. I mean, I know we all have concerns with that, but it's kind of, it is Russian roulette on that. I agree. But I like the option of bonus density because I don't like, we have a lot of promises that have been made of what a style of a building will be or whatever. And we're not getting it. And the only thing that concerns me is going back to our presentation is what does that do to the price of them? Because even the ones we're getting that are not what we want are $420,000 right now.
Yeah.
So it's not something that,
Which is in effect why the legislature
But-
changed that law
yeah.
and made us
but
lose
like,
them.
but like that development, it really concerns me because it is the gateway to work.
Mhm.
It's what everybody's gonna see. And it would be nice to be able to improve that.
Mhm. Yeah, at some point, we have to take the responsibility of the people that are going to be moving there and who are actually going to be our citizens into mind. And I do think giving them a quality, usable, yet higher density buildings is something we really do need to look at.
And one point that's just been sitting on my mind, and I know I kind of dodged a bullet this time, but why we don't have any more R7 zones left. I just don't know that that's always going to be the case. It's going back to that master planning. It's something that would have helped us a lot if somebody would have done it 10 years ago, right? I don't know that we want to just say, well, we don't have any more R7 zones, so it doesn't matter. Because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, somebody could come in tomorrow and say, hey, I want to do a.
Or the
rezone.
legislature could come in and
Legislature,
say, no, you have to zone
Yeah.
half your properties R7.
So Trevor, why would they not discuss that? I mean, it was like, the whole time I sat through planning commission, that was what I was wondering, because we talked about it.
So-
Why was that not discussed?
So we had initially talked about it in the first planning commission. The direction that I felt I received from planning commission was that that they liked the idea of overlay zones and alternate styles of housing, but they felt that that was an additional conversation later. The motion that, and then we had an extensive conversation about design standards and overlay zones and form-based code and things like that. And the eventual recommendation was to recommend approval with the next step being to work on the overlay zones for the R7. So I do feel like we did talk about that. The planning commission, just from what I remember and what from the minutes, it was just, let's put that on the next step and work on the R7. That's kind of what we talked about in code committee as well, prior to going to planning commission. And so that's.
Well, but in
that's where we're
code
at.
committee, that's not necessarily true because we did have it as part of, here's the whole concept was, here's how it's going to be an R5 and here is how it's going to be bonused up. And that was the whole intent of it. I know that the development up here does want to have the 0 lot lines, but that really wasn't the intent of that discussion. It was, how are we going to, because even with that, the public still has kind of an angst, if you will, towards going higher and higher development. And the R7 was a number that we really kind of just picked out. It wasn't something that we, really sat down and measured or anything. So maybe an R5 is a better solution that we want, but then how do we get the improvements in it if they do want to go up to the higher ones? So it really was meant to be sold as a whole package, not as kind of the individual. So
Do you feel like the planning commission misunderstood that farther process?
I kind of think that they did, but I wasn't there. I just watched on TV. But I did see almost the entire discussion was, here's what we have in front of us. The other is going to take 4 years. It's going to take, a lot longer, almost separating the two, definitely separating it far more than what the intent was. So yes.
I see. And
Well,
yeah,
that's part of
three
the
planning
problem.
commissions.
One
and
of the,
commissioners.
I'm assuming that one of the planning commission members were in code committee to hear all that.
Part.
But,
No,
but
no.
none, but that type of presentation was never given to the 3 members that night to even discuss the 5 to 7 or whatever. We didn't, it was very briefly talked about in the first planning commission meeting on this, but not the second. I mean, we did talk about form-based code and design standards and all that, because that was Taylor that brought all those things up, Commissioner Walton, but, yeah, I don't think that.
Is the desire of the council, because as it's written, it has, the 7 number and not the 5 number. And then it has, the setbacks and other things like that, the 0 lot lines. Is the council's desire to change the number to 5 and move forward, knowing that there's not the overlay zone yet in place? And that in some ways would lock it, right? Because it's not R7 anymore, it's R5 while we're adding the overlay? Or is it to wait and do those together, work on the overlay stuff and then bring that as one package?
Well, for the code committee, at least my understanding was, hey, planning commission, what do you think about dropping to R5 and bringing in this overlay and giving R7? Because, we sat there and we're like, I don't know, are those the right numbers or not? And so for my part, and I'm not blaming anyone, but I don't feel that the planning commission understood that part. And so when it comes to us, I'm like, oh, well, they didn't really report on that aspect of it. I know that they went into development standards and form-based code and such, but as far as what do you think about dropping R7 down to R5 and creating an overlay so that we can have higher design standards than an R7? I didn't see that come through the planning commission.
That's
Um,
the specific recommendation
that-
or opinion you're
That's what
looking
we
for.
were hoping to get. Is that what you remember?
Yeah. Because they are the land use authority and they really do have more of an emphasis just on that. So it was kind of one of those, and I think it just kind of happened that we kind of punted the ball over to them and then kind of punted it back because it just wasn't clear. This is what we were looking for. We needed your, opinion and outlooks on, how this would be done and what standards really needed to be looked at. So, yeah.
Is the desire at this point then to request that specific of them in their next meeting?
I think that would be good, especially if we had a full explanation, kind of showing the grand design and idea behind it of, this is where we're going, what do you feel, or what's the right number, and then what would be the standards that they would recommend. And, that may be something that they do need to do, a pretty good sized public comment or, actually an invitation to come and talk about it. I don't know. Because this is definitely a sensitive item for the community.
Sure.
That's
From
their
my
call.
perspective, again, as Joel stated, just watching online, not being present, I think there was a general consensus, again, maybe just the three, not all five, but they did like that concept, right, of doing, right? They recommended to look at that, right, and to pursue the creation of the overlay. So if it's just a question of, do you like the number 5, or do you want it to be a different number,
5 and what the overlay standards would be.
Right.
because
I
it
mean, I
needs-
heard them
needs to
talk
be combined.
extensively about how we need design standards, but what they recommend those design, I never heard them actually say, yes, go forward with an overlay. They just said, you guys really, we need to get on these design standards, and it's gonna, it was a back and forth of that's gonna take a long time and who's directing us
Sure.
to do that and when should we start and who starts it. But as far as, yes, we like the overlay, this is the XYZ we should put in it, and we do think we should drop the R7 down to R5, or no, we don't think we should drop R7 down to R5. We want to keep it at R7 and make it R10 with an R overlay, or I don't, whatever.
I'm referring specifically to the motion that Taylor made of to recommend approval and work on the overlay. So that's where I'm taking that of.
Was
they
it
want-
overlay or just design?
It was
Okay,
overlay.
thank you.
So that's where I'm taking that from.
Okay.
But yeah, the idea of asking them to dig deeper and say, what do you think the overlay should include? What are the numbers that you think are appropriate? It's to me, kind of the linear process of, like you said, code committee did some work, handed it to the planning commission. They said, council, it's now yours. And you're saying, planning commission, do some additional work on this and give us some additional details on the recommendation. So I don't feel like it's a step backwards as much as it is as a clarity saying, planning commission, yeah, we agree with you on the overlay. We're not going to move forward on the R7 changes as proposed until we have a better understanding of the potential of the overlay and what that looks like. Am I misunderstanding?
No, that sounds good. And I don't know if the council wants to throw any of the things for them to look at, whether it is, setbacks or, like we said, the garage size, so cars can fit in there and, a little bit wider, or placement of the hot water heater, I don't know, or water heater. We don't heat hot water. Anyways, so I don't know if we wanted to kind of throw things out for that, or I've just thrown out those, so.
I mean, the parking.
And the hot water.
The parking and the setback and garages and that were a discussion item in planning commission. Brandon, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What is the length of a normal parking stall in the parking lot? Isn't it 21 or 22 feet?
It's, if you're against or parking against the curb, it's 18, but then that includes the pan of the gutter, so 20 would be the depth that you typically would want to
One of the
see in a-
concerns that they brought up is with the other townhome developments is that the cars are parking, but the back of the cars over the sidewalk, which is illegal. And so that 20 feet is not deep enough. I mean, granted, that's because Utahns drive big cars and trucks or whatever, but I don't know, the length of a regular 4-door car is still close to that 20 feet.
Right, I mean, parking lots are striped with 20-foot parking stalls. I guess all I would say to that is just that sometimes, you know, if they're hanging out a little bit into the drive aisle, that's different than like a sidewalk.
Yeah. So that was why I'd bring up that.
Yeah.
Is that a discussion item you want them to review?
I definitely do, since I bought a Ford truck and never checked the measurements of my garage, and it literally closes the door by less than a half of an inch.
Yeah.
And you have to park it right. No, you actually have to push into the sheetrock some to be able to get it. But anyways. So yeah, I do think those kind of things are important, and the width as well. Usually we go with the size of a street or something, and size of the street, you're not opening up your doors to, you know, unload kids and groceries. So, you know, just kind of looking at that and, you know, getting some realism to the.
Well,
the picture
and the other
dimensions.
part of that is we're counting a 2-car garage as 2 parking spaces.
Yeah.
But if you go down to Freedom Landing, there's no way
Mhm.
they're parking 2 compact vehicles in their so-called 2-car garage. And not even a Ford truck. I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't fit a Ford truck in there in a million years. And so that's why, I mean, some of those, do we care about that? Do we not care about that? They didn't know. I mean, it was discussed, but then Gary also pointed out, or Commissioner Boatright pointed out, that then if they want to have a Super Duty truck that's 25 feet long, they need to go buy a new house. I don't know that I really agree with that comment, but that is part of, I mean, is that really our problem to solve? But because we have other areas, their 20-foot setbacks are normal, because that is from the back of the sidewalk, correct? Yeah, so
But yeah,
I personally think it should be slightly bigger, 25 foot. And I think I know we get, but this is getting into the different details of the size of the garage considering the parking, which we just went through our whole parking code already. But we probably, I don't know if we.
Don't send that back to code committee, please.
But yeah, I think that's for the PC. I mean, like I said, that's what they should be tearing apart, going back and forth, doing the research on, and
Well,
you
they
know,
did,
making a
and they
recommendation
decided to
to us.
leave it,
They lifted it what?
the 20-foot set. They did. They came to the consensus to leave it. The 3 commissioners that were there.
But again, in the vision of it being a R5 and to get up to R7, now the discussion becomes, okay, so as the base R5, is this what will we go with on the garage size? But then if you want to upgrade, if you want to go for an R7 density, you're going to still have to have much bigger garages. You're going to have, you know, some additional stuff. So I think the whole vision of it needs to come into play for them to understand that. Did that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
So with the next planning commission coming up, would the council like us to bring this back and have
Yeah.
more detailed conversations? And just say, the council wants you to consider these options more thoroughly prior to making another recommendation? Or,
I
Yeah.
would. I don't know if that requires
Yeah.
a continuance or tabling or what.
It's just a
Yeah.
discussion item, so
Yeah.
if all the council
Okay.
feels that way, then that's.
Quinn and Andy, do you have anything that you, like, if we were to do the overlay and increase standards of design, do you guys have anything that you would add to that?
So I would add the, kind of what was mentioned. A certain percentage would be, stone or
correct?
hardy board or something like that. I like that the rear of the home shouldn't face the main thoroughfare. The garages, I think, is important. I feel like we should, I mean, are we telling them that, hold on, let me go back. Are we wanting planning commission to also address the mansion style homes? Is that a discussion we want them to have?
We kind of just left it at the R7 overlay. We almost,
Okay,
I feel like it was just townhome is what's on the menu right now. So that's where our focus is at.
the exterior. Certain percentage being, upgraded exteriors, hardy board, stone.
Architectural design, I would put
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah.
One to look at.
So my take on it is very similar. I think, you know, you can have the overlay to if they're willing to abide by better design standards or more, of what we like. I think one concern question I have, and maybe it's already been done, but as we start talking about, a 25-foot setback and a certain size garage and, 0 lot lines and all these other things, are we making everything so big that the house has to be a tiny little house? If we're doing R7 or R10 or, whatever we're talking about, I just don't want to have it be this beautiful looking doghouse.
Garage.
Because, yeah.
With a really nice garage.
Right. I think it's great when we're talking single family homes and you have all that room for it, but I just haven't gone through the numbers and puzzle pieces to say, are we constraining it by wanting all these other things? So I just hope that planning commission, takes that into account. And the other comment I will add, the mansion style apartments, I know it's really not necessarily on the table here, but I cringe at that. It looks great from the outside, but having a shared entrance among multiple apartment dwellers runs into some relationship issues, noise, leaving stuff in the hallway, all that other type of stuff. So I'm not
Like a
fan.
really big family is basically what you're saying?
Yeah, but a family lives together and they have to work it out, where apartment,
I think they have separate
unrelated
interests,
people.
do they
Yeah.
not?
All of the apartments would be their own unit. It would just look like
It
a
just
mansion on
looks
the
like
outside.
a house. Like, it
So-
looks like a
But you still
giant
have
house.
You still have a common.
one
entrance,
entrance.
don't you?
No.
Yeah, so think of like a 3-story apartment complex in Ogden, right? That you have a common entrance, but then there's a dozen units in it.
So who takes
Similar
care
to
of
that
that?
is just on a,
Who takes care of the common entrance?
it's the owner of the apartment complex.
Anyway, that's just my feeling on, I think it's
Because it-
great if you want to go after apartment complexes. It'll look great from the outside, but I think there's a lot of issues you have to think about.
Okay, move along. Reports, any new business?
I just have a question for the Parks Committee, which is a report, but not necessarily.
You
New
keep doing
business.
that. This is the bi-weekly thing now.
No,
I'm not picking on you.
no, I don't think you're
Okay.
much.
I just would like to know when we're gonna hear about our train club contract.
Actually, we've been making a lot of progress down there. I don't know if you visit the parks, the Canyon Meadow Parks where the train is at. Now the north end of it has 2 tracks. It has new ballast, which is different from gravel, ballast that goes down it. We've talked with the club, with John Krupp specifically, about a new contract. We've given it to them to kind of review as a big group so that they can go over and see how they feel about everything that we put into it. They are working on a contract to hopefully handle all the weeds next year so that they're not responsible for doing it. They're going to have a professional company come out and be able to take care of it, keeping it all good throughout the entire year. And that way it's not going to just be relying on the club itself to be able to take care of it. But all of those still have to be finalized. But yeah, we've actually been doing quite a bit, and they did that north end, which looks good. There were a few places that they just needed to clean up where things were merging, but I believe that they've already done that work.
Okay, so do we have, that all sounds fantastic, so I appreciate that. Do we have a deadline for them to come back to the city? On those?
Right now, that first part was really kind of to do a judge of how much work it takes, how many man hours it takes to work a certain area to be able to get it all done. They have a lot of grand plans that they want to be able to do for the entire track. And it was a good exercise to show them, well, this is the manpower that you have and what you're able to accomplish within a 3-month. We started a kind of a trial from the beginning of July or mid-July. So they now kind of know how long it's going to take them to do that. There are some variables with going down the tracks and whatnot, but their plan is maybe being able to add more before the snow hits or before Christmas. It just depends on what the weather's going to be. They're putting in a lot of progress. And it's good to see them meeting some of the goals and times. The mid-October was the deadline that they had to finish it. I did.
Sorry,
talk-
when you say finish it, you mean just the maintenance?
Just
the
just that
area,
one section.
Okay.
And that's lifting up the tracks, putting in new ballast, putting down the tracks, putting in a very thick, commercial grade, if you will, weed protector underneath that. And then leveling and re-leveling the tracks themselves to just get it so that you don't have the issues with them falling off or whatnot. So they've really been putting a lot of time and effort into it. I would say that they probably met 90% of that. The only things that were left really were just some cleanup items, down to even the level of, okay, to put down your weed barrier, you push the chips that the city put down back, put those back forward. I mean, that was really the kind of level of issue that was remaining. So I was quite impressed with it. Right now, I do feel that going forward, they've got a good eye of what's going on, and with the weed contract, if they do something like that, then I'm comfortable at that time potentially making a recommendation to the council that we do go on and offer them at least a year contract to test to see how that goes. I've been surprised. I've been pleasantly surprised. There's been a lot of good work going, so.
Okay, great, thank you. I still would like to see that come through the whole council,
Mhm.
the contract, just to make
It-
sure that it's
And
from
it
the
will.
city.
It will,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's all my report business was.
Any other new report?
Report or new business?
No,
It's
we're-
business, I'm mixing it
Well,
up.
new business.
You're mixing him up.
I said business to begin with.
You did.
Okay.
You're right.
All right, if we have no other new business, then let's go on to council reports. Blair, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, we've already discussed most of what happened in planning commission, so I won't go over planning commission. Public safety committee met. We had some discussion on the county dispatch, which were possibly some changes coming down the road with our way our dispatch will work, or it's in initial phases. So I won't get into all the details of that. We did talk about the possibility, because Haley brought up some citizens that had requested mailbox boxes on the north side of South Weaver Drive. And Dave was going to check with the postmaster to make sure that was acceptable and where they can be placed, because that is a possibility. But it may also, if there gets to be too many, then we may have to go to something different, like community mailboxes or something. So
We actually checked on that a year ago, with the postmaster, so I can get with you later on what they said, but.
okay, well, they did give approval to do it to the
Yeah.
to the individual. The problem is where we have no park strip.
Yeah, they came back with 2 locations that there wasn't space for them to have it,
Okay,
but we ought to double check and see if it's
Yeah.
changed, but yeah.
so yeah, so probably get the information to Dave then, if you would. Trying to think what else there was. Anything else in public safety, Haley?
Signs.
Oh, and we are working on a process to have if someone wants a sign in an area, they can file an application for it. We'll determine if there's a need. There'll be a process to determine if there's a need.
What kind of sign? Stop sign?
Like
Stop signs, speed signs,
any kind of like
any kind of
safety
safety signs.
mitigation.
So we've
I guess
had,
you don't mitigate safety maximization.
they're mitigation signs.
Hazard mitigation. There you go.
Mitigation signs.
That's the
But,
right one.
we don't want it just become everybody wants a sign, there needs to be some basis for why those signs are there. Because obviously there's an expense to it, and we want to make sure that they're not causing a problem too when we're putting signs there. So there'll be an application process, and then there'll be a way to determine if it's the right way, and staff is working on that application process. And I believe that is it.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, thank you to Shaylee and Trevor and Dominique. We had a great Halloween bash, and it was a really fun event, and I appreciate you guys doing that. So, thanks.
Was great.
Municipal utilities. While it's on there, are you gonna give is there an update at all on the municipal utilities building?
Our public works
Our
building.
public works,
No,
that's what I meant to say.
no.
It's
we're-
been quiet. The email's been quiet. That's why.
Right, the last communication was, we'll have a cost estimate to you, by mid-October. We're past mid-October. I had it on my list to call her today, actually, and then got distracted with other things, so it's still on my list to call and, get a specific update, but we're
Could
waiting
we
for that
get
cost estimate.
a meeting scheduled for November so we can push that a little bit?
Yeah.
And have that ready as soon as we have a meeting in place, as soon as we hear from them.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
So the Admin Finance Committee met, we talked through a lot of things. Just one thing, heads up, is, in our start of the year retreat, we're gonna have a little bit longer, more, finance discussion about our budgets for the year and what the committees have available, what the different departments have available. You know, we've asked them and they've provided their 5-year wants, needs. And so we need to start prioritizing that because obviously we don't have enough money in budget to take care of everything. So anyway, that'll be something we'll discuss at the beginning of the year. We also talked about trying to get a little bit more of a visible financial dashboard type thing where we can see some of the resources and expected needs for the expenses from a city council standpoint. The staff knows and understands a lot of that, but we don't. And so when, you know, a need comes up and somebody says, well, we need this in the parks, or we need this in, you know, the fire department building, or, you know, whatever, we have a better understanding of what revenues are coming in, what financial situation we're in. From the ARPA money, we received everything from the government that we're going to receive, the $927,000. We still have about $560,000 of it that's not spent. So we need to, in the next year or so, identify where those monies are going to go. So that'll be something coming up in future discussion. But staff will provide, you know, kind of a status of where it's gone and some of the things we've been looking at. We'll revisit that in the next couple of months. And I don't know, Joel, is there anything else that we should bring up from the admin finance side?
I especially like, I like the software tool that we were talking about as a dashboard, allowing us to be able to see a visual representation of what's happening in each one of the departments, how much is left of their budget, really making it easier for all of us to be able to make decisions going forward on, you know, okay, this came up, now we can see if there's enough budget or whether this has to go back with an amendment for more. So kind of like.
And that's it.
Okay, want to just say shout out to our community event too. I just would like to let you guys know that I was approached by at least a dozen or more residents who said, are you going to do that again next year? So they were really excited. They were like, have you done this every year? And I just said no. And I said, no, this is our first year. And they said, please continue it. That was really fun. So just a shout out to you guys. Code committee, we kind of sat down today and looked at all of our list and kind of moved some things and I guess added some more things. So Trevor, will you add special events to our list? We moved some items off of our list to public safety. So we need to have a public safety meeting again sometime soon. We changed RV parking and RV and street parking to public safety and also traffic study standards, something that the code committee delved into 2 times and realized it was a little bit more than we thought it was going to be. And so we bumped it off our list and I put it onto yours. So,
You're
which
welcome.
is right back on me. But it's out of code, which just
Code
feels better, right? Like it just feels better. RV and street parking and traffic study standards. For our next, we kind of, again, looked at like all the goals that we were hoping to achieve. Did you get that, Michelle? Yeah. Okay. Kind of put a priority on what we thought was next. Jamie really, advised on conditional use permits. We talked about Title 10, and some other things. So basically, we're gonna start working, we're gonna have Jamie write up kind of a synopsis of our conditional use permit that's actually in code. Currently, the state requires us to put like quantitative measures. I'm leaving you out again, not meaning to, but quantitative measures onto what conditions we set. We don't have those, among some other holes. And then Trevor we discussed kind of changing the process of the development process. That's a too many process that I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Sure, that procedure, that's what I was going for. And then directed Trevor just to kind of start a zoning type matrix for all of the different zones, setbacks, and everything that we were going to look to update, kind of see where our holes are. And I guess we're going to need to add something to PR. What just got added to PR? The city center. Can we add that to our PR list, please? I think that's it.
Well, let's see, we can skip the thunder of the train club. This week, Monday, so just yesterday, I had the pleasure, and I appreciate it so greatly, of being able to go to Utah's Mosquito Abatement Association's annual conference. This was quite an event. And don't let it fool you that just because it was held in Park City, that it was limited to that level of greatness. No, it went higher. We had all kinds of classes. My favorite was the kissing bug, and whether or not it spreads its disease by pooping while sucking the blood out of animals. Very fascinating hour-long discussion.
Wait.
They do have video on YouTube to prove their points.
But are these mosquitoes or are they bugs?
No, this is kissing. This is the kissing bug, which has been mistaken very often by our common box elder bug here around town.
So at mosquito abatement, you were talking about other bugs.
Yeah, because we actually kill anything. Then we did discuss treatments, different types of promethazine, there we go, and how to spread it with different drones. Again, very, very cool conversations. So it was, overall, it was actually a very good meeting. I'm joking a lot. But they handled things like right now it's very difficult to hire employees. We all know that, and to get them to go out and driving in a truck spraying, a lot of times it's a little more difficult. So different things we could do as an association to be able to keep those employees and also get some more. And then we did learn more and more about bugs and their mating habits. But it's good information. So.
Do you want to go into that later?
Not really. It was more than I wanted to know. I also wanted to bring up that we've been working with the rec department to look at what we can do for some of the new events that we've started to talk about with the survey that went out. We've got a preliminary look at that. We do need to look at the final results for the survey when we reach it, and bring that back to the council, let you guys see and know what people are thinking as adult sports and how much they would actually be willing to pay. If that pays for itself, then it's something that we would look at going forward. Also, I did hear from the community, again, fantastic job on the Halloween party, super fantastic. The only complaint that I heard was that there was not enough invite for the public to be able to do the trunk or treat, that they wanted to be able to actually have their car there too and do it. So just something for next year, get a bigger parking lot or whatever, and let's get some more there. But loved having Burley Burger there.
I'm just going to ask what I know Shaylee and Trevor are thinking. They did open it up to the public quite a bit. Did they not? Were they not?
They didn't know it, hear it, or see it.
Did nobody like call them specifically to invite them? Was
I
that the
didn't,
problem?
if you're asking me.
Okay.
This was after.
Okay,
Um,
we'll talk in PR about maybe getting a better word out. You got, okay.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I've heard on it, so it's not. But it was a great event.
It was down.
Y'all did a great job. Tough room. Last one is, Dave and I have been looking at and trying to review what we can with the contract with the district for the rec center, just to see what we can do, if there's any availability there for some additional time. The negotiation period did pass, that was earlier this year, but it is something that we're still looking forward to maybe seeing if there's some way available to get more time for residents there, but that'll depend on the contract. So that was it.
Okay, Joel, thank you. Couple of items that I've got at the Central Weaver Sewer District meeting that I went to. They presented their expenditure for the 3 quarters, so for 3 months. And 3 items that just really stuck out, and they says everyone needs to be aware, if you're wondering why they're having increases at the district, it's because of items like this. So in one area, and all of this is oil related. So some of their equipment out there that they have to constantly replace the oil on. Already they've gone over their budget. They've spent 177% of their budget on that. Another one, the oil for the generators. They've already spent 131% of their budget. Chlorine is off the wall. They said that usually in the past, last year, for a load or a truck, they call it a truckload of chlorine, they spent $8,000 a truckload, and they said you're paying $21,000 a truckload now so they've had some real big increases out there in those areas. At the last COG meeting that I went to, the county presented their new plans. Maybe you're aware of this, I wasn't. They're doing a big expansion down at the Legacy Event Center. They're going to make it into an athletic complex. They're right now, there's 62,000 square feet of facility, and in the future they're adding 118,000 new square feet.
Yeah.
They're going to, they said that they're really going after a lot of these sporting events nationally. They're adding 15 volleyball courts, 15 basketball courts, 36 wrestling mats, 2 dance areas, arenas, cheering, and gymnastics. So they're making a big expansion.
And you wonder why your Davis County taxes are high.
Yeah. So
Because they're having to move all of the equestrian events.
I was gonna say, to
And
do
they're,
that, they have
they're
to cut down
currently
that.
building a new equestrian
well, they are. They
facility.
knew, and they said that when they moved
Yeah.
the
It's the
the
footings,
fair over to
the
Kaysville.
footings are in.
yeah, they've got 2. I think they're doing 2 big
Mhm.
arenas over there. So
In Kaysville, right?
Yeah, right,
That's in
right by your
Kaysville.
house,
Right by my house.
right by your house.
so just to make
Stupid
you aware of them,
Oh,
like,
sorry, Dave, that's, we give your address.
I have to drive a little bit.
I guess they've got new hotels. They've got a lot that's going in down there in Farmington where this Legacy Center is.
Are they gonna change their name from Farmington? Because it's not farming anymore. It's just build a ton.
Staff, do you have anything?
I don't. I just want a quick update on some developments. So Gateway has come in and done their pre-construction meeting. For that, we were also notified at the same time they are no longer pursuing selling their commercial property. And so
I'm sorry, can you start over?
the Gateway development project has come in and done their pre-construction meeting.
Okay.
Mill Creek Homes has done their pre-construction meeting. We were also informed by them, by Mill Creek Homes, that they're no longer selling or have for sale the commercial portion of their property. So they'll develop it all
Do they
within the same
realize the
property.
phasing?
Yes.
Thank you.
We notified them via letter and they sent a letter back to us and said, we've removed it from our listings. So, we have done the final inspections across the street at Sophia's Haven, and they have passed inspections. And so this was yesterday, the 24th. So it's the last day of their time frame, and they completed their improvements and the demolition of the site, and it was all inspected and approved by the inspectors. So they can move forward with that. They plan on recording the plat and moving
They
forward.
still need to remove the cement pad.
So with the cement pad, they won't be able to build on it, but with the demolition inspection, that's not a requirement to remove the pad, and so it passed the inspection. And with the improvements, it's not a requirement, the improvements, but when they do any building permits, they'll have to remove that if they're building on that. They can park on it, or they can put a 200-foot structure on it, 200 square foot structure on it, but no larger than that.
So our code actually says that
yeah, that's
here's the things that can and can't be done.
International
done.
Building Code, yes,
Okay.
follows that. So when they come and do a building permit, if they want to put a structure on it, then they would have to do a whole bunch of engineering and everything.
Okay.
We checked that with our inspector prior to the inspection. This is the week prior to that, asking if that needed to be removed. And they said that it wasn't required to pass the inspection.
Good.
So we feel pretty comfortable moving forward with that. And grateful that he got done within the time frame. So and I believe that's all of the development updates I have for you.
Can I ask a question while we're talking about that? We used to have a monthly report coming out showing all of the developments and what stages they were in. I don't think I saw that last time.
I've attached that into the weekly updates.
Okay.
So anytime I have the monthly reports attachment, that's one of them.
Okay. So I have to read your.
You said it.
I'm just saying it.
You said it, not me.
You don't have to read the attachment. You just have to look for the attachment. So just skim through. There is one more development update.
So what you're saying is I actually have to read the email?
One more development update. We did receive a sketch plan application for the Deer Run Investments, which is the owners of the Lofts project. And so we've already communicated that with the mayor that we need to get the development agreement committee put together. So he'll be making those invitations, and we'll start reviewing the development agreement with the development in tandem. We've informed the developer that we're going to move forward in tandem with those two items and not do one before the other.
Okay.
Oh, Jamie has something.
One very brief item. At the beginning of the meeting, there was some discussion about the consent agenda and how it worked. And I just, as a point of order, so consent agendas can be used to streamline meetings, and staff and the mayor will try to predict what items may not require discussion and can go there, and then the information's in the packet and everybody can review it, and then you come and you make a single motion and don't have discussion on those items. The way a consent agenda works procedurally is if any member of the council wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda and have it discussed, they simply request that it be done. There's no need for a motion, no need for a vote, and any individual member of the council can move it there. I just didn't want anyone to be left with the impression that the consent agenda is where controversial items go to hide. To be passed and to move forward, and just keep in mind that you have the ability, any of you, to move those items out and request that they be discussed if you feel that they merit discussion.
Thank you.
Dave, would you like that done when the packet is released or around there?
It can happen in the meeting. If we know beforehand, that's great. You could just send an email when you get the packet, but in the meeting, when it becomes that item and the mayor says we're now on the consent agenda, if you want to just say, I'd like to discuss, item B of the consent agenda, then it's pulled out you do the rest of the consent agenda, and then you can talk about
Pending
that.
he reads the email, right?
Yeah, there's an
Not
assumption.
that I look at it, but
Okay, then we'll close our council meeting. We are going to go into a closed session. So we appreciate everybody coming. Thank you very much. And we'll excuse those.
Mayor, I make a
Mayor-
motion, we enter a closed session pursuant to provision UCA section 52-4-205 L, D, and E to discuss purchase, exchange, sell, or lease of real property.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion, we got a second.
All right. Wait, are you calling?
All in favor, aye.
All in favor, say aye.